I have taken now to coming down on the floor because I really like being closer to you all. It feels funny to be up on the stage now because I can't feel ya, and I gotta feel ya, if you know what I mean. And somebody brought me this nifty little light. I thought first they were bringing me like little antennas. But, oh, I like it. Thank you, Leanna. Oops. So, as most of you know, we had the privilege of hosting the Canadian New Thought Conference last week, and if you were there, you know how powerful it was. It was really, really something. The energy, the connection, the upliftment, the joy, it was palpable. From my perspective, there was a definite shift in consciousness that reverberated throughout the entire weekend. Am I right? Those of you who were there. Yeah. And even if you weren't able to attend, believe it or not, you benefited from it as well. Because when something that powerful, when something that transformational happens, it affects everybody. Even if you're not present to actually experience the event. We talked last week during our Sunday service about how that synergistic energy of the weekend, it lit everybody up. It lit everybody up, and in turn, because we were all lit up, it lit up the city. It lit up everywhere. And you may be wondering, well, how is that possible? Well, let me tell you what Serge Kahili King wrote. He said, we are all connected to everyone and everything in the universe. Therefore, everything one does as an individual affects the whole. All thoughts, words, images, prayers, blessings, and deeds are listened to by all that is. Yeah? So in other words, all of that joy, all of that open-heartedness, all of that love that we had last week rippled out and touched everyone and everything because of this connection that we have. Like I shared last week in my talk, it was like all these little individual points of light just came together and connected with one another and formed this big, bright, illuminating light. And it was powerful. And I have to tell you, it took me a little bit by surprise. I'll tell you why. Because the road leading up to the conference was not always smooth. It had more than its shares of bumps and twists and turns along the way. I'm going to give you a for instance right now, just to give you an idea. It was the very beginning. We had just come together as a committee, and we had come up with our theme, Connecting Lives and Opening Hearts. We loved it. It was like, yes, this is it. And Ethel, our wonderful administrator, found the perfect logo. Perfect logo. All of us saw it. We loved it. Immediately, we were thrilled. We agreed that we were going to use it for all of our marketing, for everything. It was such a great start. We got this great thing. We got this perfect logo. We're on a roll. And I posted it on Facebook. Proud. Here's a new logo and our new theme. And I got an email from a congregant who told me that that exact same logo had been used and would continue to be used as part of the memorial for the 5 young people who had been murdered here in Calgary a few years prior to that. And she went on to tell me that one of the young men who had been killed was her nephew. And that when she saw the logo on Facebook, it brought back to her all of the pain and all of the grief from his death. And she asked me very respectfully, was it possible that we could consider changing our logo because of what it represented? to everybody in the city. So of course, we agreed to do that. We chose a new logo, which was lovely, but we really had loved that first one, you know? It was the right thing to do, and I will tell you, something like that so early on kind of took the wind out of our sails. Can you understand that? Just a little bit. Because we've been so excited, we've been so on purpose, and it knocked us a little bit off center. So that started our rocky road toward making the conference a reality. In many ways, it felt like it was a struggle all along. Now, I'm not telling you this to cause you to feel sorry for the committee or to take away anything having to do with the thrill of the conference. I'm actually telling you this to explain the challenging process that led up to the conference actually helped make the conference as wonderful as it was. So let me tell you what I mean by using an example from nature. I've actually used this, shared this process before, but it just works so beautifully. Several years ago, California had a particularly rainy winter, like super a lot of rain. It doesn't happen very often, but this particular one. And what resulted from it was what was called the 100-year bloom of wildflowers out in the desert. No one had ever seen anything like it. So being the desert rats that we are, my sisters and I, we went out to Death Valley National Park, which is considered to be one of the harshest and driest places on Earth. And this is what we saw. The desert floor was absolutely awash with flowers. There were fields of them for as far as the eye can see in one of the driest and harshest places on Earth. And so I asked one of the rangers there, and I said, so what happened? How could this happen just because we had some rain here in California? And what he told me absolutely blew my mind. It made me appreciate the intelligence of nature more than I ever had before. Because apparently, this is going to blow your mind, apparently, wildflower seeds are covered with a no-growth enzyme that prevents them from taking root if conditions are not just right to sustain their growth. So there may be millions upon millions of wildflower seeds on the desert floor, but they can't grow if they can't be sustained. So what happened this particular winter was that there was so much rain and there was just enough right amount of wind that the seeds got tumbled all around. And the no-growth enzymes literally got knocked off the seeds. As a result, come springtime, all of those seeds took root and blossomed because the conditions were primed to support them in their fullest expression. Conditions that would not have happened if the rain hadn't happened, and the wind, and the inclement weather the winter before. Can you see where I'm going with this? Yeah. It appeared that the obstacles and the challenges that we had in the planning of this conference helped to knock off the no-growth enzymes that allowed something spectacular to blossom. Yes. Here's what Ernest Holmes says about it. I just love this quote. And this is from this thing called You, one of my favorite books in the world. Everything in nature is endowed with this creative urge. When moisture is precipitated, the desert receives it with gladness and breaks forth into a song of creation. Making the most of its brief season, it blossoms in joy, storing within its bosom the seed of a future flowering. It's all already there. So let me share with you, if the wildflower analogy didn't work, let me share with you another analogy, and that has to do with the polishing of rocks. Now, whether you polish rocks by hand or whether you have a machine that's called a tumbler, believe it or not, it's called a tumbler, the process still involves putting in unpolished rocks into a container with lots of abrasive grit and sand and water, and shaking the bejesus out of it. And the abrasive material literally rubs and grinds off the rough parts of the stones and buffs them to a high gloss. Same stones. Same stones. If it hadn't been in the tumbler or shaken with all of that grit and the sand and everything else, the stones would have remained dull and rough. They need to be tossed around a bit and rubbed up against abrasive materials to bring out the luster. Okay, now, don't get me wrong. I am not saying that we have to be tossed around like a wildflower seed or like a stone in order to succeed. We have all experienced the experience of grace, right? We've all experienced when things have gone serendipitously and beautifully, and we just knew that we were supported in life. Yes? We've all had that experience. I'm simply talking about what I believe happened last weekend and the metaphysical, spiritual explanation for that phenomenon, because it was a phenomenon. So I'm going to get back to that in just a minute, but I want to continue with my story. Most of my committee is here, so they're relating to this, I'm hoping. Here we are, we're working. We are working diligently on this conference, and each member of the committee is going through their own personal growth process because they tackled a learning curve for their particular area. Wendy Ferentz isn't here. Wendy was our communications person. She had never done anything like that before. There were some people on the committee, other than Amy and me, who had never attended a New Thought conference in their life. They didn't know what it was supposed to look like. Some had never, so they went into this thing not knowing what to do, but knowing that they had something to do. And they had the opportunity to learn it, right? Talk about getting your no growth enzymes knocked off. They were literally ripped off at some points. Here's a quote by Louise Hay that I thought was just beautiful. It says, "The gateways to wisdom and learning are always open, and the more and more I am choosing to walk through them. Barriers, blocks, obstacles, and problems are personal teachers, giving me the opportunity to move out of the past and into the totality of possibilities." That's what happened for us. We walked through the gate in spite of the obstacles and the challenges, because we knew that those were our greatest teachers. So then, add to all of the planning challenges that we had. We found out the week before that our 79-year-old keynote speaker had pneumonia. Another one of our main speakers was in the hospital the night before he was scheduled to speak. Yet another one of our speakers' daughter was in the hospital prior to the weekend. So we were literally walking into this event not knowing what was going to happen, and yet trusting that all of our preparation and all of our growth and all of our prayers, combined with all of our blood, sweat, and tears, would allow for something wonderful to happen. And that's where my talk title comes in, called The Alchemy of Spirit. Alchemy is one of those words that's very hard to explain. One of the definitions, it's kind of the original use of the word from the Middle Ages, is a science that was used in the Middle Ages with the goal of changing ordinary metals into gold. Just read the book The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. A lot of us have. But there's a more modern use for the word that involves things that are less material, like turning something into gold, much more mystical. Some of the definitions for alchemy: a magical power or process of transmuting a common substance into a substance of great value. A power or process that changes or transforms something in a mysterious or impressive way. And the process of taking something ordinary and turning it into something extraordinary, sometimes in a way that cannot be explained. Now, I'm not saying that the individual elements of our Canadian New Thought Conference were ordinary or common. They weren't. Each individual piece, whether it was the speakers or the music or the Taizé service or the workshops or the sense of community, each one of them had a special quality to them, absolutely. And taken individually, people would absolutely have been spiritually fed. But what happened when they all came together, that sense of something extraordinary happening, that was alchemy. That was magical. It was mystical. It was unexpected alchemy of spirit that was wanting to make itself known in a grand and wonderful way. TV producer Sean Ryan said, "You can make a good show, but you still need some magical alchemy to get people to watch." Yeah, you know what? Is this making sense? Is it making sense to you? There's another word that kind of describes the process and that we use a little bit more commonly, and that word is synergy. Synergy is the experience of collaboration and cooperation when things come together seamlessly, where everything is kind of firing on all cylinders and the result is successful. So absolutely, without question, synergy was present during the planning, during the implementing of the conference. But what happened at the actual conference was more than that. It was absolutely alchemy because it was magical, if I believed in magic. What I do believe in is consciousness. And I'm not the only one who experienced it. Am I right, those of you who were there? Something happened. Something happened. All of us on the committee were kind of walking around going, "Can you believe how good this is?" Yes, we were prepared, don't get me wrong. And it exceeded our expectations, and our expectations were already pretty high. So then the question is, what does this all mean on a regular, everyday basis? You know, I am a firm believer that we can talk theory and we can talk spirituality all the time, but unless it's something you can take home with you and use, then I'm just up here quoting Ernest Holmes. So what is the practical basis? How can we have this on a regular basis? How can we experience alchemy in our everyday lives? I wish I knew the answer. Like I said, the alchemy is pretty mysterious, right? I don't think we can order it up like we order up a meal to be served. But what I do believe we can do is make alchemy welcome. We can set the stage for it. We can do everything in our power to bring the pieces together so that when it is the right and perfect time, everything can blossom like a wildflower. I also believe that we need to prepare the soil, our soil. And we do that, of course, by doing our spiritual work. We do it by keeping our minds clean and clear. We do it by recognizing and acting on opportunities when they present themselves. We do it by being flexible. Lord knows we had to be flexible last weekend as things were kind of coming up. It's like, okay, flexibility. And most importantly, whether you're putting on a conference or whether you're living your life, it is important to be in a state of love and acceptance in spite of appearances. This quote by Paulo Coelho from The Alchemist. He said, the alchemists spend years in their laboratories observing the fire that purified the metals. They spent so much time close to the fire that gradually they gave up the vanities of the world. They discovered that the purification of the metals had led to a purification of themselves. Everybody take a breath. By spending as much time as possible in conscious communion with Spirit allows us to become a conduit through which alchemy can happen. And then it's just a matter of release and trust. Because when all the elements are there, and alchemy does indeed take place, the results are astonishing. Thank you all for your support at all times, and so it is.